Hello out there and good morning, traders. It's February 15th, 2024. Welcome to the Apteros Daily Market Insight. Got a couple of recaps to do today as we had a couple of extra markets for us yesterday. So let's dive into ES first. We had a line in the sand on ES based on scenario 1, which was a bullish move up above. We don't even need to talk about really scenario 2. We had some neutral inflections that came into play for the session here, really. In the beginning here of the session, we were kind of looking at the move heading up into that area. So we were looking and prepping in this zone here. Went right up to that neutral reference there. Possible a little bit of a scalp, seeing that early momentum on the open, staying along with scenario 1, so looking to that bullish side. Problem is that the move just kind of originated from a spot that we didn't have a particular reference from. So it was really just like a bias type of move up to there, looking to get to that overall destination. Then, of course, the market sells off and gets close to our neutral area right down here, also in line with scenario 1. Doesn't quite test that area, doesn't quite test that neutral reference. So, take that for what it is. It's not a clear-cut opportunity, but it is along with scenario 1 in our overall bias coming into this neutral level here down at 49.71s. And then pretty much bought up all the way through the session here, going through into our 3 targets coming into the overnight session. We only really got these 2 targets for the actual session here, but heading into the overnight and so forth, we ended up reaching our final destination, and that was what we saw yesterday on the ES. So scenario 1 pretty much playing out, staying bullish was a pretty decent idea for the remainder of the session, pretty much all the way through just this one section here. But we had kind of an idea of what was going on in that section after we tagged this neutral reference and started to sell back off, heading back into our line in the sand area. All right, so now we're taking a look at the NQ from yesterday. A little bit more of a straightforward back and forth movement for us yesterday from NQ. Very similar idea to what was going on in the ES. We had an overall line in the sand here with scenario 1 being bullish up above. Don't even need to look at scenario 2 for yesterday. We ended up seeing a very similar type of price action. So NQ going up into a neutral reference here, selling off back into a neutral reference, where scenario 1 pretty much took over from these lows, and then it was just, straight up to our destination in the session. So taking a look at NQ, definitely a little bit of a better price movement for us overall, with our bullish ideas and our neutral references kind of hanging up and holding around there. So NQ, I think pretty straightforward. You had 2 opportunities here in scenario 1, really, and that was kind of the main driver for NQ, and then heading up into first destination and then second destination. All right, so now taking a look at what was going on with CL. CL was kind of interesting because we got the first bit of movement out of this thing heading up into a target area, and then from there we started to see this market continue to change. So our main scenario was really at this line in the sand, looking at scenario 1 heading up into this target here. That's what we ended up seeing pretty much from here to here, looking at 2 areas there, just kind of sticking with scenario 1 heading into the open of crude. Once we accomplished that target, scenario 1 coming out of this line in the sand was pretty much over for us, and we were kind of sitting on the side here, coming back into our line in the sand area. A couple opportunities possibly to get back on with scenario 1 in this zone here. It looks like really just one chance, but breaks down, doesn't really work out for us. We start to see this hold below our line in the sand here. Is the acceptance picture all the way there? No, not yet. But once we do this move here, this particular move here, the acceptance picture now shifts, and we're into scenario 2 here at that line in the sand. Get a great opportunity to go along with scenario 2, heading straight down into our first target, and then, of course, into our second, where we were looking to be bullish, but we just ran out of time essentially in that market. And guess what? It broke down a little bit here. So now we're looking at possibly seeing a shift on crude to the downside as well. But this really was our main line in the sand for the session, especially the early part of the session. And scenarios 1 going to its target, and then, of course, we get a complex kind of area right in here where we end up shifting to scenario 2, and then, of course, scenario 2 heading into its target areas. So overall, really great day for DMIs across the board. It's kind of what we do here. So let me just dive into ES, and let's get those session plan and levels updated. All right, so taking a look at ES here, probably going to get a little bit of news actually right now. So a little bit of volatility will come into this, but we have an interesting landscape across the board with ES. We do have a bearish zone here, and we're monitoring that as the main line in the sand, I think, for the session for today. We'll be looking at scenario 1 being bearish below this area, and then, of course, scenario 2 being bullish up above that area heading into this neutral reference here. So as we kind of watch the volatility, peek around here with the news, we'll get a feel for what's happening. Overall, this line in the sand comes from our lower time frames being, at a bearish extreme on those time frames and a condition extreme on those time frames. So that's the current what is picture. So we're going to be monitoring that with scenario one. It's not an extremely recent, change in this market. So the recency on it's a little bit down, but still, what we're really seeing here is dissonance in the ES. We have higher time frames that are looking more bullish, and we have shorter time frames that are looking more bearish, and for the higher time frames to continue to play out up to their target. So the higher time frame idea really is heading up into this neutral reference here. So that's the overall bullish idea. But for that to happen, these shorter time frames have to fail. So we have to get up above this line in the sand and continue to the upside. So we have to kind of see scenario two start to play out. Otherwise, the shorter time frames take over for today, and we might see kind of a deeper pullback into possibly this higher time frame area and zone back into this lower area here. All right, so that's kind of the landscape what we're looking at. We do have a neutral kind of zone right here that we have to pay attention to for those shorter time frames to really, break to the downside. This neutral area between the 50-15s and the 50-06s is going to have to kind of break down a little bit too. So it's not a straightforward scenario around what's exactly happening today because we do have that dissonance. But the easiest way for me to describe the overall context is this bullish idea really is the main kind of driver around what we've been seeing in the ES, and this is the overall destination for that. The only problem is that we have a major area in between there that we have to clear out. So with our shorter time frames and our main line in the sand, we're looking at scenario one, which is the current what is picture there, which would be a hold of that area and a possible, push back into this higher time frame bullish zone, right? That would be what would be playing out if scenario one holds. If scenario two holds, then we're seeing that higher time frame idea continue to play out and give us a really great opportunity to get long into this upper neutral zone. And then, of course, from there, heading to the upside, there really isn't much in terms of references and so forth. So we just have to continue to move higher and higher. All right. So that would be trend following kind of above this neutral area here. Okay, so that's a full breakdown of what's going on today. If we do head back into this higher time frame area, we are looking for bullishness up in that higher time frame area, and that would be kind of a move back up into these zones here. If this area breaks down, then we do have a spot lower for destinations, kind of a short-term kind of scalpy type of situation where we would look for that move here into that neutral reference there. And then this neutral reference would be a real test for bulls. If we break down this neutral reference, it's a lot of open space at the downside.